Thank you all for making the time in your day to come and spend a little of it with me. I've been an astrologer for, 55 years now, and I've given lectures and workshops and taught classes and stuff for a long time. And this book, The Heart of Astrology, was 20 years in the making. You know, Baba asked me in the way that he asked, in 2004. And by 2024, it actually came to be. So, what is this book and why would I stay with it, other than the fact that I'm a follower of Mayor Baba and I'll do whatever he asks me to do as best I can? The key is that, and I can see it now, that we are in this trap. And astrology, which Baba says is a perfect science, actually has some keys that allow us to unravel the mess that we've got ourselves in. Now, I want to read this to you. It's, some of the stuff that's in this book was a no-brainer, because it was just like, oh, that obviously goes there. But this is at the introduction. Consciously or unconsciously, every living creature seeks one thing. In the lower forms of life and in less advanced human beings, the quest is unconscious. In advanced human beings, it is conscious. The object of this quest is called by many names: happiness, peace, freedom, truth, love, perfection, self-realization, God-realization, union with God. Essentially, it is a search for all of these, but in a special way. Everyone has moments of happiness, glimpses of truth, fleeting experiences of union with God. What they want is to make them permanent. They want to establish an abiding reality in the midst of constant change. And that is the purpose of the book. Is there a way to do something that furthers that mission? Now, obviously, we were raised with a philosophy, a religion, a belief, political outlook, all kinds of mush that goes on in our mind. But astrology has a special lens, and people have been being God-realized for billions of years. And civilizations have come and gone, universes have come and gone. But what makes this a special tool that can make it something that helps you raise your consciousness, to see something further, to go to some higher realm, to eventually overcome this incredible prison that we're all hypnotized by it. We're deluded by Maya. We're caught in the illusion that somehow this is real, that the world around us has some substance. Well, guess what? It's all a sham. It's all a pretense. But it has a very important, special role to play for each of us in our lives. It is the thing that allows us to develop consciousness. And once consciousness is complete, which it is, as Baba has told us, when we come into the human form, all that we have to do from that point on is keep unfolding, keep getting rid of things until everything is gone except him. Okay, well, what stands in the way? Your astrology chart has some clues to that. So the book, The Heart of Astrology, has 3 sections in it. The first section is called Spiritual Foundations. The second section is called Conferring with the Planets. And the third section is called How Karma Works. Well, what do we take for granted? What are the spiritual foundations that we're building on? The first chapter of the book is called The 5 Gifts of Astrology. And there's lots of astrologers that have been practicing for a long time that probably do not recognize these gifts, but they're hiding in plain sight. As soon as you have them brought to your attention, you say, oh yeah, of course. So what are the gifts? Tolerance, timing, comprehensiveness, self-understanding, a spiritual path. Well, what does it mean to be tolerant? I mean, I know astrologers who aren't very tolerant, but they have at their disposal the tools for being tolerant. You realize, okay, there's 12 signs of the zodiac, there's 12 houses, there's a myriad of aspects, there's 10 planetary bodies, and as many other things as you want to add into the pizza. But the point is, nobody has the exact birth chart that you do. And if your birth chart actually does describe you, then it stands to reason that you have a point of view and everybody else in the world has some slightly different point of view. And that doesn't mean that they're all wrong and that they're all full of it and you've got the right answer. You have what you have for you, and other people have what they have for them. And astrology helps us come to the conclusion that we should be tolerant. And as you grow in connection with the divine and you realize, hey, there's order and symmetry to the way that creation operates, you realize God put all these other people, all these other things in the world for us. It's not that we are supposed to go out and convince everybody to think like we think or to see the world like we think. It's like, that's not the message. So this issue of tolerance keeps her coming back. It's something that we keep working on. And to be tolerant doesn't mean that anything that anybody does is fine. You have a point of view. It's like you know what's right and what's wrong for you, maybe even in an abstract sense. Oh, somebody's getting ready to do something that's really bad. They're going to suffer because they did that. Okay. So we come to that, and the first chapter of the book, we spend some time talking about that. But then the second thing that's very easy to see for astrologers is there is such a thing as timing. You know that you get up in the morning, you go to bed at night, you go to work at a certain time, you have a job to do, maybe you're punching a time clock, maybe you're just fiddling with stuff that has to be done by the end of the day. But certain things happen at certain times. And astrology is great at being able to help finding what is the perfect time. Mm-hmm. We're always working under the restrictions of what's possible. An astrologer will be confronted with somebody saying, my wife and I we want to get married. Now, can you choose the right wedding day for us? And I said, sure, I can do that. Here, your chart and their chart. So, well, it's got to be on a Tuesday because that's the only day that we both have off. And I've always wanted it to be in the spring. So could you choose? It's like pretty soon the restrictions get in and you're trying to get the perfect time, but you're dealing with a lot of contingencies. But astrology is very good at finding the best time. The most difficult thing for most people with the whole timing thing is waiting. It's like, okay, some of you here probably read Errico's book on Padre called All These Things Take Time, Mister. And he tells the story about how the Taj Mahal was built. And the architect for the Taj Mahal puts in the foundation and disappears. And the caliph sends out emissaries everywhere, and the guy magically shows up 3 years later. And he says, why did you disappear? He says, because it needed 3 seasons for the concrete to set before it would hold the way that you want it to. And if I had been here, you would have pestered me to go on and start building it right away. And that's the dilemma that astrologers often suffer from, is that we can see something, when is the appropriate time, and we don't have the latitude of making it happen. And don't misunderstand me, astrologers can be wrong. You can see the time, but you really want it to be a different time, and so you're forcing, some time to be right that really isn't. But putting it in the most positive light, yes, having the leg up, meaning that you can look at the planets and you get something for an astrologer's akin to, well, I'm not going to go plant corn in Nebraska in the middle of February. I can wait until spring because that's a better time to plant. It's like that kind of thinking is what brings us along, and astrology becomes more and more facile at that. And then the comprehensiveness of astrology, we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but right now, just to understand the simplicity of the astrological symbolism, everything in your experience can be described by a handful of symbols. And those symbols give you the entire panorama of everything you experience in life. It's a miracle. I use the illustration in the book it could have been any number of different people, but I used the chart of Billy Graham, where he has the sun in Scorpio, is the moon conjunct Jupiter in Sagittarius, and the moon, by the way, just for the record, for those of you who are astrologically savvy, his moon is actually void of course. And a lot of astrologers will tell you if the moon is, meaning it's not going to make another aspect before it leaves the sign, it's going to be a bad lifetime, a tough lifetime or something. But he obviously had a very successful lifetime. The moon, Jupiter conjunction in Sagittarius shows that he was, like an evangelist, a Christian minister, which is a Sagittarian thing, that he went to many foreign countries, which is a Sagittarian thing, that he wrote a lot of books that were published, which is a Sagittarian thing, 33 books. And it was like all over and over again, the symbols replicate themselves in many different dimensions in the person's life. That's what makes astrology so fascinating, and people looking at it and saying, well, how do you know whether the person's gonna, just be bummed out because they failed a test in geometry, or they're gonna fall down and break a leg? I mean, it's not so simple to separate one thing from the other, but all the symbols are there and they all describe what's going on. Anyhow, so the nice thing about the self-understanding part of astrology is that you look at your chart and you find out things that you didn't know. Now, obviously, if everything was brand new, you would say, this isn't worthwhile, this isn't a good frame of reference. But you know certain things about yourself that are described in your chart. But you also see certain things in the chart that are saying, well, wait a minute. Am I really that way? Do I do that? It allows you to go to a deeper level of self-understanding, not just with your own psychology, but with events in your life. And so, all of these gifts intertwine with each other, but you reach in the game where your self-understanding can't seem to go any deeper with the symbols, and something else opens up in front of you. A doorway opens up. That, my friends, is called the spiritual path. It's like, oh, okay, there is something more. I can't understand myself unless I take a leap. I go beyond what I have known about myself. And that doorway opens, as Baba describes, I'm going to see if I meant to put a marker in this and I didn't. But let me see if I can pull it up magically here. Some things I don't mind paraphrasing, but some things, Baba's words are so potent, I want to make sure I get them exactly right. The spiritual path begins when the soul tries to find itself and turns its full consciousness toward truth, God. And that's from the discourses. So there is a point where the world doesn't hold any juice for you anymore. It's like, okay, so what? I could make more money, I get a bigger house, and I could get a better job. You know, it's like, but it doesn't matter. It just loses its taste. You know, some of you had the good fortune of knowing Baba's beloved, Mira, and she once said, you know, you're lucky to live in the Kali Yuga because it is very easy to make spiritual progress during the Kali Yuga because the externals are so against it that you are forced to grow, and that being forced to grow pushes you over the finish line. You come to something new. Well, that had great significance for me because I realized that sometimes when we're really down in the dumps and our life isn't working so well, we turn to the beloved, we turn to God, we turn to our higher consciousness. It's like, okay, none of this other stuff's going to work out. What's it really all about? And it's like a wake-up call. It's like, Baba says, all you have to do is take my name. How can you be easy? Can it be easier than that? You know, it's like, oh, okay. So, Baba Lover told me this dream that he had. It wasn't my dream, but it was a good one. Saying, all of the people all of us were gathered around like a swimming pool, and we're living in the golden age, and everything's nice. And Baba comes into our midst and says, do any of you want to lead the new life? And he goes off by himself because everybody is satiated. They're happy. And as the Buddha said, there's greater joy in a desire overcome than a desire fulfilled. But as long as you can get your desires fulfilled, it's like, oh, this is great. Why would I stop? It's like we're all like alcoholics that just keep taking another drink even though it's not good for us. But there's no incentive until we hit a place where, okay, this isn't working anymore. But the thing is that we hit that place quickly when we are living at a time when there's great pressure from the outside. Anyhow, so those are the 5 gifts of astrology. And then the second chapter is called Tuning into the Cosmos, and I'll just be brief with this. Tuning into the Cosmos is a chapter that says, okay, so you're, you're an individual and you want to know more about yourself. Well, what can you learn from the external environment? What can you learn from the cosmos? It's like, as Hermes Trismegistus says, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. It's like, okay, the microcosm and the macrocosm mirror each other. That means if you're going to, for men, women would have a cosmetic supplement for this, but if you're going to shave, you're looking in the mirror to shave. You know, it becomes easier seeing it in the mirror. I guess if you're putting on mascara is probably easier if you've got a mirror to look into. And it's like, in that sense, the universe teaches us. And so tuning in to the universe is a big step, and it helps. Then the whole rest of the first section of the book, unlocking your spiritual potential and the moon and transformation, all of it unfolds basically down to, you learn about yourself, your ego, your center of consciousness, which is the sun, and you experience the universe, the external force, as the moon, and then you have a physical body. Well, you know, because you've been told, you were paying attention, that you do not make spiritual progress except when you're in the physical form. Well, why is that? What makes this physical form so important? It's because that was a rhetorical question. That's the intersection between what's you and what isn't you. Your physical body you identify with and you see it as yourself, but you know it's just an external physical material object. And we need that physical object in order to make contact with the external environment, which allows us to learn, to grow, to unlearn, to unwind the samskaras that we picked up since we've been here. It's like all of this requires a physical form, and it's not a long discourse on this, but the Buddha pointed out something that I talk about in other talks, but I wanted to say because it's in chapter 2. You want to put up this here, the 12 nidanas and the signs of the zodiac. They match each other perfectly. The Aries is ignorance, Taurus is karma formation, consciousness is Gemini, name and form is Cancer, the 6 senses is Leo, which is the 5 organs of perception and the added ingredient of the higher sense, and contact is making physical contact with the external world, and then we sort it out into preferences, which is Libra, things we like, things we don't like, things that are neutral to us, and then the things that we really like become desires, and we focus on them, and then the clinging to desires becomes our God, whatever. And then we go to becoming, which is what we're bringing into being, and then birth, which is Aquarius, which is where things develop in our mind, and then death, suffering and death is Pisces, which is the end, it's the disintegration, and then we end up with ignorance. That is where we are on the wheel again. I've studied this for over 50 years now, and the thing with the 12 nidanas and the signs of the zodiac is that overcoming the wheel of karma, the things that bring us back into incarnation, means really understanding that if you're not born, you don't die. If you don't have desires, you don't suffer. If you are able to extinguish the ignorance, you don't have the formation of karma. I mean, each step on this ladder is a result of what's gone before, and it is a precursor to what follows. So it becomes an extremely important wheel, and something that some sects of Buddhism study very deeply. Not to go off the rails too much on this, but mostly the Four Noble Truths were emphasized in the northern school of Buddhism, and the 12 nidanas, or dependent origination, was more something embedded in the southern Indian tradition. You know, it was interesting that, you know, with all the world religions, they're like fossils. You know, you dive into them and there's no living property. They're like going into a museum. But, you know, we're in the springtide of creation, which is a revitalization of all of this. Katie, could you put up the chakras for me? Yeah, the physical body is formed by wheels of light called chakras. And the root chakra, which is the base of the spine, is where survival happens. And so we have that. First, we establish a sense of identity. Then the second chakra, we reach out, we have relationships, we harmonize with others, and then our personal identity is associated with the solar plexus chakra, and then the heart chakra is Venus, and Mercury is the throat chakra, and then the moon rules the point between the eyebrows, and that is where the visions of what we are to do in life are created. And then the crown chakra is where the universal light comes in. Why this is important, and why I've taken the time to describe this, is that this is how we use the planets to energize different parts of our body, how we become balanced, how we maintain relevance in the pattern of our own life and able to move forward. There's a vibrancy to them. And I mention it because as you get adept at working with different things in your life, if you get really sensitive to wanting to grow spiritually, that becomes I'm giving you sort of the cook's tour around this whole first section of the book, which is to help you move forward. The second section of the book is called Conferring with the Planets. Now, when you talk to some astrologers, they'll be event-oriented, and they're not interested in anything except talking about the things that you can verify empirically. It's like, okay, you had an automobile accident when you were 3 years old, and you know that you lost hearing in your right ear when you were a teenager, and it's like, and so on. It's like you get married at 35, and it's like all what we call predictive astrology, which isn't wrong, but it's like half of a picture. And then there's the other half of psychological astrology says, I don't care about that. All I care about is like, I don't care that, you know, automobiles are in a combustion engine and they're ruled by Mars. What I'm interested in is Mars is the planet of desire, and it is where my anger is lodged. And this is the thing that gets me into trouble, all of which is true. And both approaches have validity, but they miss the point. You have Mars inside of you creating mental and emotional states and physical behaviors, and you have events that are Mars events in the external world. But who created them? They're all created by Mars, and Mars is not an abstraction. Mars is literally a deity. All of the planets are beings in themselves. And, you know, it does, if for astrologers could easily understand this, because they got the picture that Mars takes 2.5 years to go around the zodiac, and Saturn takes about 30 years to go around the zodiac, and Jupiter spends about a year in each sign of the zodiac, and it's like, they're not random. It's not Tinkerbell deciding that, oh, I'm going to go over here and, you know, like, sprinkle some pixie dust on this person. And well, you know, when you read the ancient scriptures, you know, for Greece and Rome, they're having temples to these gods and goddesses. And it's like, as if they operated capriciously. It's like they're completely, you know, laws unto themselves. But they're not. They operate according to rules, rituals, timing. All of them operate inside of a framework. And to understand that framework, which we call a pantheon, and when I'm talking to other astrologers about this, using, you know, the planets for self-development, they say, well, how about Sedna, and how about the asteroids? And it's like, how about the comets? And, you know, it's like, yeah, they're all there. But to get simple about it, you focus on the planets that rule signs of the zodiac. You find, why is that? Because the signs of the zodiac, just as we were talking about the 12 nidanas and the signs of the zodiac, they are the potency. They are the ladder. They are the things that allow us to measure where we're going and what we're doing. So I talk about 5 planets in this section: Venus, Mars, Saturn, Mercury, and Jupiter. And each one of these registers something inside of your nature. You know, this astrologer, Krishna Namacharya, wrote a book which I was very fond of called Spiritual Astrology. And I'm going to see if I get the quote here. Wow. Here it is. Love as beauty is the first experience of truth. If without Venus, we would have no incentive to grow. It's like we are attracted to things that are beautiful, to things that are loving, that pull us. You know, and that power of attraction is there. And people will say, hey, but I thought Mars was desire. Yeah, but Mars by himself, we'd all kill each other. Which, you know, Mars is a fucking barbarian. It's like, he's useful, you gotta have him, but he's, as a god unto himself, he's the one that got us into this to begin with. You know, it was the initial Big Bang, the impulse that brought us into creation. It's like, how could we be so stupid to get tied up in this long journey through creation? You know, you want to be a stone for 1 billion years and then to go through, you know, all of these forms, you know, all the minerals, and, you know, it's like, oh my God. And then you finally get to the human form, and, well, I'd rather do it myself. Okay, it'll take you 8,400,000 lifetimes doing it by yourself. But luckily, Mars has a purpose. He does, even for us. Yes, he got us into this, but he gets us out. If you didn't have Mars, you wouldn't be able to stand up. You wouldn't have any energy to do anything. So Mars is vitality. And if you're confronted by a big bad bully, if you don't have a good Mars, You don't have any courage. You can't stand up for yourself. You can't make the good fight. But somebody insults you. Yeah, Mars is the guy that has you get out a gun and shoot the person. But that doesn't get you out. That's the point. It just keeps getting you in deeper. And at some point, you see Mars interacting with other planets pulls you beyond that. So learning to talk directly to the planetary deities, it doesn't mean like now you've become a polytheist. It doesn't mean that you're like worshiping, a bunch of, false gods. It means that you're learning to use the resources that are at your disposal. They're there to help you. That's all. There's only one God. There's only one thing that ties all of this together, and so it's very understandable to sort of stand back and not want to get overly involved in this way. But when you talk to Mars and you start dealing with Mars in your own chart, just like when you start dealing with Venus in your own chart, you start getting somewhere. It's easy to speed up the whole process. Now, how about Saturn? Well, astrologers are fine to say, oh, Saturn's your friend. I say it all the time to people. But what does that really mean? I mean, it's like one of my early astrology teachers, Ron Davison, says, well, nobody says, yippee, I broke my leg. It's like, yeah, there are difficulties that we confront in life. And Saturn is karma. And we get pushed by the karma that comes to us that we have to deal with. But that doesn't mean that we're lazy or slackers. It's just you do it without creating new karma. Baba talks about this in the discourses of that it's an art form to express non-binding karma. And that is the trick of lightening your load and getting out from under it. And so, as my astrology teacher, Doris Hibble, used to say, where would you be without your bones, skin, and teeth? Which are all Saturn. So we learn to work with Saturn. We find things that, darn it, I really wanted this thing to happen, and it didn't. And so there is that disappointment. But did we learn anything from it? Did we see what was being offered to us when the waitress came and says, oh, I'm sorry, we're all out of that. Everything that you're asking for on the menu is gone. Okay, well, we have a choice to make. We can get angry, we can brood, we can, fight, or we can see it's like the silver lining. What is in there that is a good? And there always is. And, people make up all kinds of hypothetical things. It's like, well, what good was it for the 6 million Jews to go to concentration camps? I'm saying you can create a lot of different Stephen King horror stories in your mind and think, that was a terrible thing. It's like, yeah, and that wasn't the journey of the soul. As Mayor Baba says, if you go to a movie and it doesn't have a happy ending, it was because the story didn't go on long enough. It always has a happy ending. So my point is that coming to terms with Saturn is and just talking to him and getting what the deal is from him. Now, Mercury is, you've got a tiger by the tail when you start talking to Mercury because you're trying to understand your mind with your mind. Mercury rules all forms of movement, all forms of creating, of thinking, perception. It's like it is the whole principle of duality, which we are trying to heal. We're trying to overcome that separation between us and God, between us and the environment, between the individual and the cosmos. Even something simple like with your love relationship, your husband and wife, or somebody that you feel very close to. It's like, how do you merge? How do you get close enough that the two of you actually breathe as one? Well, that's the role of not a romantic partner, but that's the role of a master. And if you could, Katie, could you put up the mutable signs on there for me? Now, this is a oh, I'm sorry. It was my fault. I mean, I have all of these as adjustable ones, but I didn't get this one in the adjustable form. Maybe. Let's see if you can go to the resize image thing there. Okay. Well, maybe this is a long hike. I don't know. That's okay. This will work.
Okay, one time. You know how to do that?
I just wanted you to see it a little bigger, but it doesn't matter. You could just scroll down with the mouse, and usually you can make it wider just by moving the wheel on the mouse. There you go. Okay. So the point is, look at Mercury and Jupiter rule the mutable signs. Mutable is tangible. Well, every season of the year starts with a cardinal sign. The middle of the year is always a fixed sign, and the tail end of every season is a mutable sign. I'm telling you this, it's like too many things to deal with, but just one simple trick. When the sun is going through a mutable sign, it is the easiest time to make adjustments in your life. Regardless of what else is going on in your chart, it has that extra edge. So when we've crossed the vernal equinox and we are in spring, and then we go through Taurus, and then we get down to Gemini, at the time that we're in Gemini is the adjustment time period. And it sets the stage for how we enter the next cardinal sign. So 4 times a year we have that, and they're ruled by Mercury or Jupiter. Well, Mercury is the student, Jupiter is the teacher. The aspect between Mercury and Jupiter in your chart, if you have one, will show how easy it is to translate information into a useful truth in your life. Anyway, just wanted you to see that. Again, with all of these things, we're just sort of scratching the surface, but that's the only way we can do it really right now. So Jupiter, we're going to talk about Jupiter here for a minute. Jupiter is the king of the gods. If you read The Nothing and the Everything by Balkachuri, he describes the third plane of consciousness in there, which was given to him by Baba. That Indra is literally the king of the gods. And it comes with different names and different cultures, but it's all the same being. And in your chart, and the reason I'm going over this is because in your chart, this is a synthesizing agent. This is the grand administrator. All of the angels report to him. All of the, all of the nature spirits, and all of the planetary hierarchy reports to Jupiter, who literally is the king of the gods. And learning to make peace with your Jupiter is very important. But there's a problem. with any one of the fire signs. Why? Because the Sun, Mars, and Jupiter are all, self-oriented. Could you bring up the fire signs for me here? There we go. That's the fire signs. Okay. The fire signs are ruled by Sagittarius, the Sun, and Mars. Okay. What's the big problem with the fire signs? Is getting a picture that there is anybody else. Mars is, the reason that Mars is a warrior is like, it's a sense of entitlement. And the Sun, operating completely on its own in the limited ego self, is solipsism, is narcissism, is there's one person world and it's me. Jupiter, king of the gods, well, suppose your Jupiter, king of the gods, gives you permission to be the only thing that matters. So there is always the problem with the fire signs of being unintegrated. You got to have them. You got to have all of these things. Do you know, those of you who've been with me through other talks know that I'm fond of this story, but it's true. In 1943, in Nazi Germany, people didn't pray for Hitler, they prayed to him. He had become Jupiter. Now, Baba, when he took Musk from India to be in southern France on the edge of Germany, he says that the German nation is undergoing a collective psychosis. It was a breakdown. And in that sense, this collectively, Jupiter had come to have this other significance. So the point is that being able to utilize any of these things in your own chart, recognizing that we live in a pluralistic universe. Saturn, the lord of boundaries, it's like limited time. It's like somebody doesn't like Donald Trump, a celebrity, has a sweatshirt that says, "Is he dead yet?" It's like, okay, because they know that Saturn, there's a limit. There's a limit to everybody. There's a limit to everything. But my point is learning to work with the fire signs in an intelligent fashion is you recognize, and Jupiter, the planet of abundance that multiplies. In Greek mythology, he was a philanderer. He'd had sex with lots of people and was, procreating all over the place and having a great time. But the point is that Jupiter doesn't have boundaries. Jupiter rules light and space. Saturn rules sound and time. And the two of them together create creation's web that keeps us imprisoned. And they rule. We don't have to switch, but I'm just going to show. Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces. Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius. So these last four signs of the zodiac are the universal signs, and they create the rules of the game and implement them. Okay, so how do we grow beyond these hot button issues? How many times have you been at a family dinner and had a political argument, or you have a falling out because your parents are Jehovah's Witnesses and you're a follower of Mayor Baba, or you're a Baptist and the rest of your family's Episcopal. It's like it all boils down to, again, simple thing, is learning tolerance, learning timing, learning how to be comprehensive in your outlook, get a deeper self-understanding, and know that the spiritual path that you are on is for you. It's your own. It's like, here, come over here, let me show you how it's done. You got to do this. It's like, we all tend to fall into that way of thinking. I mean, even when we say, no, we're liberal, we say that we accept everybody else as everything, we don't. I mean, the truth of the matter is, we all have prejudices, and the best that we can do is learn to accommodate them, to overcome them, and to work in an organized fashion to go beyond them. Now, I know we're going on a little longer than I wanted to, and I just say the third section of the book is how karma works, is to understand the process of creation and to understand why and where we were born. And the third part of it is to look and say, here's the rules. Here are how you can actually get out. Here's what you can do to overcome the limitations that you experience in your own chart. Well, again, we could go on and on with this, and I could go through a lot of detail with them, but what I wanted to leave you with here is that, you know, we all get there. There isn't a soul in creation that will not be God realized. Just some of us are slower in getting there than others. And I get a hunch, you know, when I look around the room whenever I'm giving a talk on karma and reincarnation and astrology, thinking, you know, God has recycled us many times. And that leaves me to, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on in 2025, because this is entirely my own prejudice on this, but I mean, I'm not completely in the blind, and I didn't make it up just off the cuff. But we're in a very, very precious time period. We are in a time period where the whole world is getting ready to change in ways that we could not even imagine. And it's remarkable that God has watched over us enough to keep correcting things that go wrong in creation to stop us from just exploding. You know, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto were discovered between 1781 and 1930. And if you think about it, if you're a student of history, everything changed in that. We had, you know, the democratic revolution around the world. You know, we think of in the West, you know, we think of the United States and France, but there are lots of other places. And yes, there was democracy to a certain extent in Athens and so on, but this now became something that took off. And then we had the discovery of Neptune, which the whole idea of, you know, like wanting to have not just legal equality between people, but economic equality, and taking care of people who were less fortunate. And then, you know, with the Pluto being discovered, we had this tremendous release of infinite power. And what are we going to do with it? How are we going to stop from killing ourselves? Anyway, what's going on in 2025? 2025 has Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, all changing signs. Now, Mars goes around the whole zodiac every 2.5 years. So that's not, you know, the fact that it changes signs, that in itself is not a big deal. But the sign that Mars is in matters a lot, because Neptune, which is the planet of culture, has just completed its 14-year cycle through Pisces, its own rulership, and is now in Aries. And Aries, Neptune in Aries is explosive, because Neptune in Aries, several things happen with Neptune in Aries. Generally, the world is at war, number one. Always we have inflation. It's like a rapid increase in, how much your money can buy. And so on, fashion changes and so on. But the bottom line is, it is a time of a great crusader spirit. And that's ushering in, just started on the 30th of March, and will go on. There's a slight break for a few months near the end of the year, but next year, Neptune in January will complete its transition into Aries, and will for 14 years it'll be in Aries. Remember, the Civil War started with Neptune in Pisces. Okay, but there was no fighting. The South had seceded, and there was this posturing. McClellan was the general that was ahead of the Union Army, and they were marching back and forth, and but what happened when Neptune went into Aries right after that? Well, suddenly the fighting broke out, and it was brutal, and it wasn't just in the United States; it was all over the world. There was a time of great upheaval and violence. Now, what about Pluto? Pluto, the lord of the underworld, lord of infinite power. Last November, Pluto went in for keeps into Aquarius, and Aquarius is the sign of individuality, the sign of innovation, and Pluto being there will definitely stir the pot in terms of science, application, the way that people envision the world, how they look at things. And with Neptune, by the way, I take it from other astrologers, and I've asked a lot. I don't think that there's ever been a time in recorded history where Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto and Saturn all changed signs within a 12-month period of time. But this happened. This is happening now as we speak. It's a very big deal, because Uranus is infinite knowledge. Neptune is infinite bliss. Pluto is infinite power. The three divine aspects of God. It's infinite. But infinite doesn't function so well inside the finite unless it's harnessed to something. And for you, each one of us as individuals, we don't handle these forces well until we've handled Saturn, the lord of karma, the lord of boundaries. Once we've handled Saturn correctly, then these higher properties can function quite well in our chart. So what happens when Uranus goes into Gemini, which will be in July of this year? Well, every time Uranus has been in Gemini, which it'll be for 7 years, every time America's been at war. It's like it started with Uranus, then we had the Civil War, then we had World War II. It's like, okay, so just statistically, this doesn't argue for it being a very peaceful time, but what is the sign Gemini about? It is information gathering, how we connect with each other, and so all of this stuff is changing. All of this stuff is changing. Now Saturn, the Lord of Karma himself, is going into Aries. And why this is significant is Saturn is boundaries, and wherever Saturn is transiting, things have like a damper on them. Well, Saturn in Aries will mean it will be very, very hard for people to initiate something new. Doesn't mean that it won't happen, but mostly what we'll see is a revision of the things that are already put in place. And it argues for people having to work very hard to get things done. Now, Saturn going into Aries will, make, the conjunction to Neptune. Saturn is the ability to materialize, and Neptune is the ideal. So it is a magical aspect when it's used correctly to bring about something good. And because Aries is ruled by Mars, exactly where Mars is in the year is going to matter a lot. Mars started this year in Leo, and then it went back into Cancer, and now it now has gone into Leo on the 18th of April this year. Will be in Leo for a couple of months, and then it stays between Leo and Capricorn the rest of this year. So it'll be a time of hard work, but it becomes the barometer. You can kind of measure, what's the temperature of the water boiling over in our civilization. Jupiter, on the other hand, goes into his exaltation on the 9th of June. He goes into Cancer, which can be very good, or it can be something where we get caught in the soup, and we get caught up in just our own world, and turning our back on what goes on with the larger civilization. So, the message is, okay, we do have to tend our own garden. You can't be off being Miss Bossy Pants telling everybody else what they ought to do. You gotta be taking care of the things that are really yours to do, but at the same time, we are our brother's keeper. We do have to take care of each other. That's like, and again, Saturn, the Lord of Karma, is in his exaltation, not this year, but he's in his exaltation in the sign Libra, which is the sign of balance. And this year, going into Aries, he's in his fall. And Saturn does not operate as we would have expected to, but it still becomes a tool for helping us get where we need to go. Now, I'm going to stop, but I'm happy to answer questions or to give you an opinion about absolutely anything at all, except who's going to win the World Series or something like that. But do you have any questions, any thoughts, anything that is on your mind? You've all been very patient, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend a little time with me on this Sunday afternoon. Any questions? Okay, well, you all have a wonderful time, and if you're reading my book and you have questions as you're reading it, just send me an email, give me a call.
I actually have a question.
Okay.
So you talked about this is a really good time because it's challenging, that we can grow spiritually, and it sounds like there's a lot happening with all the planets changing signs. What would your suggestion be of how we can, I know, of course, always thinking about Baba is a good suggestion, but is there anything more like at a practical level that we can do to, well, obviously we got to stay sane because it's trying times, but is there something that we can do during this time that's fruitful?
Yeah, is to grow up, is to mature. It's this time of immense reevaluation. And I gotta say, recognizing that the world that we were born into is gone. It literally is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And pining for the fjords doesn't get us there, you know, it's like just to recognize, okay, this is done. And that doesn't mean that the principles that we grew up with, the ideals that we grew up with, are dead. It's just the forms. It's like, okay, looking and trying to, I was listening to a colleague who some of you have tuned into from time to time on the internet recently, Rick Levine, saying, let's face it, the year 2025 is nuts. It's like, it's just, we're throwing everything up in the air and shooting it, you know, it's like, all right, but that doesn't mean that you have to freak out. Do you know that, I remember when I was in college studying psychology that they found the people who were mentally ill, when the economy got terrible and the world was falling apart, if they were mentally deranged, they got better if they weren't too far down the tubes. If they were, they just got worse. But it always had an effect, one way or the other. And I would say spiritually, that's true. It's like, I've heard people say, oh, well, yeah, the spiritual path sounds nice, but it's too hard. What? I'm thinking, oh, you got something better you want to do? It's like the president, a different president than we have now, saying, well, if we pulled out of Iraq, it would be admitting that we made a mistake. Well, if we made a mistake, maybe it's time to admit it and do something else. It's like, again, it is very easy to be hypnotized by the goings-on in the world and to just recognize that, hey, none of this really matters. And if we got it, we really understand that none of this matters, we can pull out of it. We end up making too big a deal out of it. It's like, okay, you can say, oh, well, that's easy for you to say, you're in good health, and you have plenty of money, and you have all, well, you know, my life is not a bowl of cherries, you know. It's not like everything I wished for happened. It was like, it's not like that. But to be able to be attached to your inner wisdom, to recognize your Jupiter tells you what's right and what's wrong. If you listen to it, it is the voice of conscience. And to implement each planetary placement in your chart correctly, to have good boundaries, to be disciplined, all of the Saturn lessons, to have, you know, strength, courage, all of the Mars lessons, to think good thoughts, as the Zoroastrians say, good thoughts, good words, good deeds, all of the Mercury lessons. It's like, don't make anybody else miserable if you're having a bad day. Haven't you noticed when you're walking down the street and you smile at somebody, and it's like, it lightens the spirit for them, but also for you. It's like, okay, we can get on with it. So you're asking a good question, and I'm sorry if I'm just giving a generic answer, but it's, as the saying goes, this too shall pass. And eventually, creation will pass. You know? Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Okay, well, thank you very much, Jay Bobby.
Thank you.